Hey guys, tonight we're diving into a world that's somehow even messier than your group chat after midnight. The glittering, jaw-dropping, gloriously extra lives of the filthy rich during the Civil War. Forget smoky battlefields and melancholy violin music. Tonight is all about the other side of the cannon smoke. Silver bathtubs, solid gold chamber pots, and banquets so decadent they'd make even your most pretentious cousin blush. So before you let your eyelids start their slow descent, do me a tiny favour. Hit like and subscribe, but honestly, only if you actually enjoy this kind of thing. No pressure. Drop a comment with where you're listening from, and whether you've ever considered installing a marble staircase just for your dog. I read every single one. Now go ahead and dim those lights, crank on a fan for that white noise rich person sleeping by the seaside vibe, and get comfortable. Maybe wrap yourself in your softest blanket. Extra points if it isn't lined with the ermine fur. And if it is, congratulations on time travelling here from 1862. Let's ask some truly important questions. Have you ever wondered what it's like to eat a 12-course meal while the rest of the country is rationing shoe leather? Or how it feels to throw a party so lavish that you run out of diamonds before you run out of caviar? Would you flaunt your wealth with a carriage pulled by zebras? Or invent a new type of shoe just to avoid touching the same ground as regular people? Ever wonder if the Union's richest slept better, or if Confederate fortune smelled more like cologne or just burnt sugar? And now, congratulations, you've just woken up in 1863. Your mattress is stuffed with goose down and probably some unresolved generational guilt. You're surrounded by velvet, gold, and the distant sound of someone playing Chopin very, very badly. Welcome to the upper crust of Civil War America. It's time to see how the 1% survived, thrived, and made absolutely everyone else want to roll their eyes. You wake up to the sound of a harp, because alarm clocks are for people who know what work is. Your bedroom is the size of a small modern gym, sunbeams filtered through imported silk curtains. A servant stands by with hot chocolate. Coffee is so last decade, and you briefly wonder if you'll spend the morning reading poetry or just staring at the ornate ceiling, deciding which of your 15 wigs to wear today. Stretch out, if you dare. The sheets are cool and slick under your fingertips. Real silk. The kind that has never seen a washing machine or even a hard stare. The bed is so wide you could get lost in it, and somewhere, deep in the distance, you suspect a decorative dog is still snoring among the velvet pillows. The ceiling above you is an explosion of gold-leaf cherubs and clouds, because nothing says good morning like being judged by 1,000 miniature angels before breakfast. There's no such thing as waking up alone. The day's barely begun, and already your personal attendant is standing by, ready to fluff, brush, or discreetly shield your eyes from last night's empty brandy glass. Outside, a second servant adjusts the curtains so the light lands just right on your face, glowing, but not enough to actually reveal any wrinkles. Privacy? That's for poor people and hermits. A porcelain basin sits on a marble table, ready for your ablutions. Cold water is for the working class, so yours is gently warmed, scented with orange blossoms imported from somewhere only rich people can pronounce. There's a selection of soft cloths, each one monogrammed. You're given exactly 6 minutes to freshen up. After that, a housekeeper will sweep away the basin as if it's radioactive. Then come the morning wardrobe decisions, a military operation involving a valet, 2 maids, and a handwritten note from your mother. They present you with options. Will it be French silk, English lace, or something a little scandalous from New York? You're expected to choose, but the choice is really more about who you're trying to outshine at brunch. The valet holds up a selection of cravats, all starched to within an inch of their lives. One is embroidered with tiny silver anchors, a subtle reminder that your father once owned a ship, or maybe just really liked sailing metaphors. You settle into your dressing chair. There's a hairdresser armed with oils, pomades, and the determined look of someone who's seen things. Wigs are fluffed and arranged. No less than 3 are debated before you agree to the casually extravagant style. Your scalp is perfumed, powdered, and gently patted until you feel ready to face the world, or at least the breakfast room. You look in the mirror and see not a sleepy human, but a walking, talking declaration of generational wealth. Of course, breakfast attire is not to be confused with outdoor attire, riding attire, or clandestine tennis match with your rival's spouse attire. Every outfit is a calculated maneuver in the ongoing social chess game that is upper crust survival. And if you're wondering if people judge you for repeating an outfit, absolutely. You might as well admit defeat and start eating porridge with the staff. As you make your way down a grand staircase, each step is padded, so your slippers never make a sound. The walls are lined with portraits of ancestors, all of whom appear to be silently critiquing your posture. In the main hall, the faint aroma of hot bread and something suspiciously like truffles drifts up from the kitchens below. You pause, take a moment to savour the hush, and remind yourself that this is just the beginning of another day spent performing the world's most complicated morning routine. By the time you reach the breakfast room, you're perfectly powdered, coiffed, and emotionally prepared for whatever drama the day will bring. Congratulations, you have survived the waking hour, wrapped in luxury, lifted by servants, and insulated from reality by 3 inches of brocade. And the hardest choice you'll face before noon, whether to have your eggs soft-boiled, poached, or simply presented on a silver tray with a sprig of parsley and a note of admiration from the cook. Forget scrambled eggs. Your breakfast comes with its own waitstaff and at least 3 types of game bird. You're expected to comment on the texture of the imported honey, while your butler carves fruit into tiny swans. Your first decision, orange juice or champagne. And should you be insulted if your eggs are not prepared in a pan made entirely of coin silver? As you approach the breakfast room, your senses are greeted by a low symphony of clinking crystal, muffled footsteps on Persian carpets, and the subtle aroma of something so buttery it might cause spontaneous cardiac arrest. The table stretches the length of a bowling alley, groaning under the weight of more delicacies than your local grocery store stocks in a year. Each place is set with enough cutlery to perform a minor surgery, at least 4 forks, 3 knives, and a mysterious spiral-handled implement that everyone pretends to understand. Your chair isn't just a chair, it's a throne, cushioned, embroidered, and expertly positioned for maximum visibility from the hallway, should any late-rising relative wish to gauge your fashion choices over scones. The butler stands ready, a master of subtle judgment, armed with the day's short list of breakfast options. Short, in this context, meaning merely 10 pages. You try to act nonchalant, as if you're not fazed by the fact that there are more types of bread on offer than you have cousins. First comes the parade of beverages. The orange juice is squeezed from oranges that were, until yesterday, sunning themselves in a Florida grove. Champagne is poured so carefully it barely fizzes. One mustn't startle the palate at this hour. If you're feeling especially daring, you might ask for coffee, but only if you're prepared to weather a lecture about continental habits from an elderly aunt. The hot chocolate is so thick it qualifies as both a beverage and a light dessert. Next, the eggs arrive. Not just any eggs. These have been coddled, poached, and possibly serenaded before reaching your plate. The cook is rumoured to sing to the hens for improved flavour. Omelettes are folded like silk handkerchiefs. Yolks are golden, quivering atop pillowy whites. And yes, that pan is sterling silver. Woe betide the kitchen if it's not. If your yolk isn't the colour of the family crest, you're allowed to sigh heavily and suggest the chef consider alternative employment, though you probably won't, because the chef knows where your favourite truffles are buried. The supporting cast is even more impressive. Quail, pheasant, and the ever-controversial partridge, roasted to perfection. There's smoked salmon nestled on toast points, caviar that's been imported at great risk to several customs agents, and bacon cut so thick it borders on performance art. You do your best to sample everything, which mostly means holding a fork thoughtfully and making appreciative noises as the butler cycles through dishes like a one-man food parade. No meal would be complete without the appearance of fruit, sculpted, not sliced. You marvel at how a simple melon can be transmogrified into a battle scene from Greek mythology. There are pears in the shape of doves, apples carved into tiny soldiers, and grapes arranged to spell out your initials. You consider the time and labour that went into this breakfast, and quietly hope that nobody expects you to actually eat the art. Meanwhile, conversation flows with the same buttery ease as the hollandaise. Topics include the rising price of vanilla beans, the latest scandal involving someone's third cousin, and a spirited debate over whether the scones should be served with imported French butter or merely the second-best local churn. You learn more about society's pecking order by observing who gets the first slice of ham than from any newspaper. Finally, the meal winds down with a selection of pastries so delicate they threaten to dissolve in the sunlight. You nibble, you sip, you pretend to be interested in Aunt Lydia's story about her disastrous trip to Vienna. The butler appears one last time, presenting a silver tray of toothpicks so ornate they're rumoured to be recycled from lost royal jewellery. By the end of breakfast, you're not so much nourished as gently dazzled, unsure whether you've just dined or attended a performance. One thing is certain. In this world, breakfast isn't just a meal. It's an event, a spectacle, and a reminder that the truly wealthy never have to butter their own toast. You don't put on clothes. Clothes are placed upon you by a small army of attendants. Each layer is an act of economic warfare against your peers. Today's outfit includes peacock feathers, imported lace, and a jacket rumoured to have cost more than a new locomotive. Buttons. Pure gold, obviously. You begin your transformation standing, arms obediently outstretched, as 3 maids, 2 valets, and a cousin on fashion probation circle you like jewel-toned vultures. The first layer, the finest linen undershirt, so delicate you're warned not to breathe too hard. Next comes the silk waistcoat, so slippery it could double as a magic trick. The fabric itself is imported, of course, because local cloth is for people who think thread count is a form of currency. After that, the fun truly begins. A seamstress appears with gloves so white you're afraid to look at them for too long, lest you stain them with eye contact. Embroidered lace cuffs are added, actual handmade lace, with a price tag that could ransom at least one minor European aristocrat. The lace is attached with pins so tiny and sharp you briefly consider whether the true flex is just surviving the dressing process with your skin intact. The centerpiece today is your jacket, a garment so ornate and dazzling that birds have attempted to court it during outdoor events. It's festooned with peacock feathers, each selected for optimal shimmer and arranged in a pattern meant to evoke both war hero and glamorous migratory waterfowl. The jacket's cut alone required 3 tailors, 1 mathematician, and a fainting couch for onlookers. Gold buttons gleam from every edge, custom cast in the family crest, so you'll never forget exactly how old money smells. Answer: faintly of banknotes and pomade. And don't forget the trousers, pressed so sharply they could slice through family drama. They're secured with suspenders woven from imported French silk and, for reasons lost to history, tiny seed pearls. You can almost hear your accountant quietly weeping into a ledger. The finishing touches arrive with much ceremony. A cravat starched and folded into an origami masterpiece is tied around your neck by someone with the title of assistant to the cravat assistant. On your feet, boots so shiny you could check your teeth in them, though why risk scuffing the mirror finish with something as pedestrian as walking? Slippers are carried in a velvet pouch for the brief moments when your feet must touch the ground, though you're assured the rugs are plush enough to qualify as luxurious indoor topsoil. Hats, of course, are their own existential dilemma. The current trend is a top hat with a silk band and a plume so tall you could potentially use it to dust the chandeliers. It is placed on your head with reverence, then slightly tilted for that I woke up like this, but actually required 4 people and a level effect. The overall sensation is one of being carefully gift-wrapped. You feel less like a human and more like a walking, breathing investment portfolio, one that crinkles, glimmers, and at times squeaks with every movement. There's always a moment of existential dread as you remember that any accidental spill or stray drop of rain could reduce the day's outfit from fortune to future cautionary tale. Stepping into the hall, you pause for the required 10 seconds of admiration from family, staff, and the inevitable parade of guests. Every glance, every raised eyebrow is an acknowledgement that you have once again declared financial dominance through fabric. You imagine the poor soul tasked with tallying your dry cleaning bills and make a mental note to tip them, generously, but not so much as to suggest you're careless with money. So begins your day, dressed in a dazzling array of fabrics, feathers, and existential bravado. The point isn't just to be seen, it's to be remembered, envied, and ideally talked about in hushed, slightly jealous tones at every dinner party for the next decade. After all, in a world where fortunes rise and fall, only true style is recession-proof. Carriages are status symbols, and yours is so encrusted with gems it looks like it rolled straight out of a fever dream. Your horses are matched, of course, but you've been considering ostriches just to annoy the neighbours, your only destination, anywhere you can be seen. You descend the grand staircase, velvet cloak trailing behind like a comet, and step out onto the marble steps as if gravity itself has been instructed to behave. The air is thick with the scent of freshly cut roses. Your gardener has been up since dawn, snipping every bloom within a 3-block radius just to ensure your entrance is sufficiently floral. The sunlight catches the side of your carriage, sending sparkles ricocheting off the driveway and briefly blinding the neighbour's butler. He'll recover, or if not, you'll send flowers. Your carriage isn't just a way to get from point A to point B. It's a rolling declaration of superiority, part luxury yacht, part mobile art installation, and part strategic battle weapon in the ongoing war of neighbourhood envy. The body is lacquered so smooth it reflects the morning sky, while elaborate scrollwork of gold and silver wraps every curve like icing on an absurdly expensive cake. Along the sides, coloured glass and semi-precious stones shimmer, because nothing says tasteful restraint like a vehicle that might double as a treasure chest. The horses are a match pair, selected less for their temperament and more for their ability to pose dramatically in sunlight. Their manes are braided with ribbons, their hooves are polished to an almost offensive shine, and each sports a tiny jewelled medallion in the family crest. The coachman waits, stoic and resplendent in a uniform that costs more than most people's entire wardrobes, hat tilted just so, boots so glossy they might actually be made of obsidian. Climbing into the carriage, you take a moment to appreciate the interior. Velvet cushions, real crystal in the windows, and a faint hint of imported perfume that lingers like an expensive secret. There's a small cabinet for refreshments, a hidden compartment for discreet letters, and enough gold fringe to outfit an entire marching band. You settle in, pull the tasselled cord, and with a gentle jolt your parade begins. You instruct the coachman to take the scenic route, which is code for please circle the main square at least twice, so everyone has time to register their inferiority. The city wakes up around you. Cobblestones echo with the rhythmic clatter of hooves, windows are thrown open, and shopkeepers pause mid-sweep to take in the spectacle. Children gawk, dogs bark, and somewhere in the distance someone's grandmother whispers your name in a mixture of awe and mild disapproval. Inside you sit like royalty, watching your own reflection glide past in every storefront window. The carriage sways gently, cocooning you in luxury and leaving the world's worries somewhere back among the peasantry. Occasionally you lift your hand to wave, a slow, regal flutter that says, "Yes, it's me. Yes, you may speak of this later at dinner." Modern comparison, it's like driving a supercar except the supercar is hand-embroidered, pulled by animals with better hair than you, and occasionally stops for a team of footmen to leap down and brush a leaf off the wheels. Also, the horn is just your coachman clearing his throat, gently but with great consequence. You don't really have a destination in mind. The point is to be seen, envied, and, ideally, mentioned in at least 3 different social columns by noon. Maybe you'll stop at the bakery for a croissant, carried to you on a silver tray naturally. Maybe you'll loop past your rival's house, just to ensure her morning tea is ruined by the sight of your emerald-encrusted wheel spokes. The city is your catwalk, the carriage your chariot, and every bump in the road a gentle reminder that life for the moment is a perfectly choreographed spectacle. By the time you return home, you've accomplished your true goal, being the talk of the town, the envy of the envious, and a living, rolling testament to the art of conspicuous consumption. Congratulations. You've made commuting glamorous, impractical, and deeply unnecessary, just as any self-respecting member of the Civil War elite should. You never eat alone. Breakfast is a battlefield of subtle jabs and whispered rumours. Who lost their fortune? Who gained a mysterious European count? You try not to choke on your scone as your mother hisses the latest news about Mrs. Fairfax's secret second husband. The dining room buzzes, but not with the kind of excitement that makes the morning feel bright and optimistic. No, this is the slow simmer of well-dressed family members and obligatory guests all fighting to claim a tiny square of conversational territory. Silver spoons tinkle in porcelain cups with the soft menace of distant thunder. The air smells like fresh bread and potential disgrace. Today you're joined by an uncle who still claims to have inside sources in Washington, a cousin who wears too much cologne for a breakfast hour, and, of course, your mother, Queen Regent of Information Warfare. You take your seat, expertly balancing a plate of poached eggs and the weight of imminent social catastrophe. No sooner have you buttered your toast than the conversation pivots to the real menu. Who's in, who's out, and who may or may not have fainted at the last cotillion for reasons that will not be discussed in mixed company. Your mother leans in with the poise of a seasoned general, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper that somehow carries across the table. "Did you hear about the Van Pelts? All that silk and now not a penny to their name? I suppose you can't wear a loan payment." Across from you, Aunt Lydia raises an eyebrow, her universal sign for tell me more, but make it juicy. Soon, the table becomes a symphony of coded language and artful side-eyes. Cousin Eleanor, a notorious eavesdropper, innocently asks for more jam and accidentally on purpose knocks her napkin to the floor, just in time to catch the juiciest detail about Mrs. Fairfax's aforementioned second husband. A count from somewhere near the Black Forest, or was it Blackpool? You know how she is with geography and men. The butler, trained in the ancient art of selective deafness, moves around the table pouring tea, careful never to react to names dropped like precious heirloom china. You try to focus on your meal, but it's impossible. Every bite of muffin is a risk. What if you're mid-chew when your father decides to casually mention that the Richmonds are rumoured to be selling their third home? Imagine the disgrace of a snort laugh at the wrong moment. Last season, Uncle Robert nearly choked on a biscuit when someone announced a cousin's engagement to a baron who turned out to be a moderately successful butcher. There's a certain strategy to breakfast gossip. Each tidbit is measured, like sugar in tea, too much, and people stop believing you. Too little, and you lose your edge. Your grandmother, silent for most of the meal, finally speaks up to recount a scandal from her youth so shocking it involves a runaway piano, a disguised duchess, and 3 kinds of illegal cheese. You try not to let your amazement show. After all, in this room, surprise is just another weakness. If there's a lull, it doesn't last long. Someone's always ready to stoke the flames with a "did you hear?" or an "I really shouldn't say." But the flow of information is relentless and sometimes creative. You wonder how many reputations have been lost before the morning's jam even sets. And just as quickly as it started, breakfast draws to a close. The last crumbs are brushed from the linen, the final sips of tea are swallowed, and everyone rises in a flurry of silk and suppressed opinions. You leave the table not so much nourished as armed with stories, suspicions, and a mental list of who to avoid, who to impress, and who absolutely must never discover that you too once fainted at a cotillion. You step into the day, already a survivor of the first and perhaps fiercest skirmish, the family breakfast, and if you've managed not to drop any secrets or choke on a scone, you can consider yourself, for now, victorious. Your parents are hosting a charity ball for wounded soldiers, by which they mean a 12-hour dance where the donation is mostly in the form of seeing who can out-glitter whom. You briefly consider sending socks to the front, but only if they're monogrammed. The invitations go out weeks in advance, each one engraved, perfumed, and so thick with gold leaf it's rumoured a few soldiers could be financed just by melting them down. Your mother spends days agonising over the guest list. Too many new money types and people might get ideas. Too few, and who will gossip about the size of the dessert table? The house staff doubles overnight, footmen arriving in crisp uniforms just to polish doorknobs, and the ballroom floor gets a buffing so intense you could eat soup off it. Not recommended, the soup course comes later. By noon, the florists have turned the house into a jungle of imported orchids, roses, and mysterious blooms you're pretty sure are illegal in 3 states. Giant banners proclaim support our brave boys. In flowing script, the ink barely dry on what will become tomorrow's wrapping paper. Tables groan beneath the weight of pyramids of food, oysters, candied fruit, cakes stacked so high they require their own insurance policies. All of it to ensure that the word generosity is spelled out in calories and spectacle. You prepare for the ball by enduring a lecture from your father on the nobility of sacrifice, which, in his case, means parting with the family's second-best champagne. Your mother, meanwhile, inspects every inch of the drawing room, searching for anything less than dazzling. You catch her forcibly rearranging a vase because the lilies weren't evoking enough patriotism. There's a scramble to secure an orchestra. The previous one was dismissed after playing a polka that simply didn't inspire enough charitable giving. As guests begin to arrive, the main event unfolds. Not the silent auction or the fundraising speeches, but the unspoken contest of charitable one-upmanship. Ladies arrive draped in so many jewels you half expect the chandelier to file a complaint. The men compete with medals, real and imaginary, and everyone waits to see who will make the first dramatically large donation, ideally in full view of the society column reporter, standing at the punch bowl. Beneath the glitter, the war effort takes centre stage in name at least. There's a table stacked with baskets of knitted scarves and socks, each boasting the donor's initials in gold thread. Rumour has it, Mrs. Pendleton had her cook-baked cookies shaped like bayonets, and Mr. Astor has pledged a whole barrel of brandy for medicinal purposes naturally. You consider adding your own contribution, a letter-writing campaign to the front complete with pressed flowers, spritzed lightly with perfume and a subtle note to think of us when you're not being shot at. The fundraising part of the evening is cleverly disguised as a series of games. roulette for the regiments, a raffle for a picnic with the mayor, and a silent auction for the honour of naming the family's next racehorse union victory. By the fifth waltz, it's clear that philanthropy is mostly a dazzling excuse to show off one's best pearls and sharpest elbows. And yet, between the winks and whispered bids, you notice a few earnest faces, an aunt dabbing her eyes, a cousin solemnly folding a letter to a cousin at Gettysburg, a guest quietly pressing a larger-than-usual cheque into the donation box. By midnight, the charity ball has raised a sum impressive enough to merit its own gossip column entry, even if half the proceeds will be spent on cleaning the candle wax out of the parquet floor. As the last guests teeter home, glittering and tipsy, your family basks in the glow of good deeds done, at least until the next party, scandal, or urgent request for just one more monogrammed blanket. In the end, was it philanthropy or pure PR? Perhaps a bit of both. The soldiers at the front might not see the monograms, but back home, the town will be buzzing for weeks about the night the rich dance for charity and each other. And you, having survived another marathon of society at its most generous, can rest easy, knowing you did your part by simply looking marvellous. The menu features everything that's currently illegal, endangered, or both. Turtle soup, oysters by the bucket, champagne that could pay a regiment's salary. You eat until you're bored, then discuss plans for an even bigger feast, this time with live peacocks as table decorations. You arrive at the banquet hall fashionably late, because only the truly wealthy can treat punctuality as optional. The room is ablaze with light from 100 chandeliers, each one so covered in crystal and dripping wax that the place could be mistaken for an opera house caught in a snowstorm. The table is longer than some village streets, weighed down by pyramids of fruit, towers of sugar, and more forks than you could possibly use without violating several laws of physics. Your place setting has a name card written in calligraphy, so elegant you briefly consider framing it. Beside it sits a menu, hand-printed of course, outlining the evening's culinary itinerary. You notice the first course alone features ingredients imported from 3 continents and a mysterious herb infusion that the chef claims will awaken the spirit. Translation, it costs more per ounce than gunpowder. The meal begins with turtle soup served in fine porcelain bowls. You sip slowly, aware that somewhere a turtle is silently plotting revenge. The flavour is rich, the broth is clear, and the garnish is naturally edible gold leaf. The servers float through the room, bearing trays of oysters stacked so high they resemble geological formations. You watch as one particularly determined uncle tries to out-eat the family record, only to be gently reminded by the butler that the caviar course is still to come. Every dish seems designed to make a statement. Here, war might rage outside, but within these 4 walls decadence marches on. Platters of roast quail and wild duck appear, garnished with fruits no one dares to eat because, honestly, you're not sure if that's a kumquat or a jewel. The centrepiece is a glazed ham shaped to look like a miniature battlefield, complete with caramelized cannons and soldiers made of asparagus. Someone jokes that it's the closest anyone at this table will get to actual combat. The wine flows freely, each bottle worth the combined annual wages of the kitchen staff. A footman whispers the provenance of every vintage Bordeaux Madeira and something so rare that your father makes a point of mentioning the connections that secured it. You pretend to understand, but mostly you're waiting for the next spectacle. A dessert parade featuring spun sugar doves and a multi-layer cake taller than some of the guests. By the time the final course arrives, a selection of cheeses so pungent they've been given their own table and warning sign, everyone is sated, slightly tipsy, and already plotting the next gathering. Conversation drifts, as it always does, to how to outdo this banquet. Suggestions fly. Live music, synchronized swimming in the ornamental fountain, or perhaps, for a truly memorable evening, live peacocks strutting between courses, their feathers matching the evening's floral arrangements. Amidst the laughter and low murmur of contented guests, you glance out the window. Far off, the city glows with lanterns and in the distance the occasional flash of cannon fire. The war is never far away, but tonight it's held at bay by velvet drapes, the steady pop of champagne corks, and the collective agreement that reality can be postponed, at least until dessert is cleared. A servant quietly appears with a silver tray of petit fours, each delicately iced with patriotic slogans. You pick one up, half listening to your neighbour debate whether turtle soup will ever come back into style. Someone proposes a toast to survival, and glasses are raised with a flourish. As the banquet winds down, you wonder if history will remember these feasts. Will they be a footnote, a cautionary tale, or just another faded photograph of gloved hands, empty plates, and too many crystal glasses? For now, you sit back, pat your stomach, and contemplate the peculiar talent of the rich, the ability to feast as if the world isn't burning just beyond the garden wall. Dancing isn't just dancing, it's strategic warfare. You choose your partner not for love, but for political alliances. The wrong waltz partner could spell social exile, while the right one might just secure your family a new railroad. You enter the ballroom beneath a canopy of glittering chandeliers, each one sparkling so fiercely you worry they're powered by pure anxiety. The air is thick with perfume, ambition, and just a whiff of burnt feathers. Someone's hat got too close to the candelabras again. The floor is polished to a deadly sheen. At least one cousin will spend the night skidding dangerously close to the punch bowl. At the far end of the room, a string quartet launches into a lively polka, but no one actually dances polka anymore. It's there for atmosphere, like the ferns or the rumours. Your first task, survey the competition. It's not enough to show up, you must show up with intent. Your shoes are buffed, your cravat is starched, and you've practiced the faint mysterious smile that says, I'm both approachable and far, far above you. You scan the room. Who's here with whom? Who's lingering near the windows, plotting a late-night rendezvous or perhaps eavesdropping for next week's gossip? A matronly aunt elbows you toward the dance floor just as the opening waltz is announced. This is it. The social equivalent of a chess match played with gloved hands and brittle egos. You accept a hand from Miss Whittingham, not because you enjoy her company, but because her father controls half the state's coal supply. You twirl, you glide, and all the while you keep your smile steady as a general's nerve. Somewhere behind you, a less strategic dancer is paired with a recently disgraced heiress. It's the social version of stepping into quicksand. You make a mental note to send condolences. As you swirl across the floor, your mother's voice echoes in your mind, a gentle reminder that every misstep is both literal and figurative. There are rules to this game. Don't step on toes, don't speak too boldly, and under no circumstances let your emotions interfere with your calculations. You talk about the weather, the war, and the latest Parisian fashions, but what you're really discussing is whether her brother is looking for an investment partner. Dancing, you realise, is less about rhythm and more about reading the battlefield. Between dances, you hover by the refreshment table, feigning interest in a glass of sherry while scoping out your next move. Nearby, two rivals circle each other like Victorian sharks, one trying to lure a shipping magnate's son, the other already securing an invitation to next Tuesday's private supper. Every compliment is a gambit, every laugh a veiled negotiation. The social climbers are relentless, their ambition barely hidden behind bouquets of camellias and faux innocence. No ballroom is complete without drama. Word spreads fast when someone's shoe flies off mid-quadrille, or when two eligible bachelors make a pointed show of asking the same heiress to dance. Dueling, in the traditional sense, is mostly out of fashion, but there's plenty of blood drawn by way of cutting remarks and aggressive fan-fluttering. If words were weapons, at least 3 guests would need a surgeon by midnight. And yet, beneath all the scheming, there's a strange kind of camaraderie. The musicians play on, the chandeliers keep twinkling, and for a moment, everyone pretends this dance is just for pleasure. You relax slightly, knowing you've survived another round, your family's reputation intact or, with luck, just a little bit elevated. As the final notes fade and the crowd drifts toward the exit, you can't help but marvel at the delicate dance of power, grace, and occasional disaster that is the grand ballroom. Tomorrow, the gossip will fly. Alliances will be measured in waltzes and whispers, and you'll plan your next move, because in the Civil War's gilded world, social Darwinism is best practiced one elegant step at a time. Shopping is cardio for the soul. You storm the city's finest stores with an entourage, outbidding rivals for Parisian gloves and silk parasols. Today's haul includes 3 hats, 2 rare perfumes, and a dress that's literally illegal in most northern states due to its sheer impracticality. You begin your assault on commerce at the break of 10:30, because nobody with real money wakes up early unless there's an auction. The carriage delivers you directly to the front steps of Branson's Emporium, a palace of mirrors, marble, and eager sales clerks trained to spot a generous tip and a vengeful socialite from 50 yards. Your entrance, timed perfectly between a gentle rain and a competitor's yawn draws attention from every corner. The doors part, and your entourage, 2 cousins, a professional hat critic, and your mother's most trusted spy sweeps in behind you like a cloud of silk and ambition. Inside, the rules of engagement are clear. Never show excitement, never reveal your budget, and never, under any circumstances, let Mrs. Wentworth buy the last ostrich plume before you do. You glide from counter to counter, barely brushing the velvet ropes that separate customers from those who might actually purchase something today. Gloves are examined, parasols are twirled, and bonnets are modelled at impossible angles before being rejected for the crime of looking too last week. The real battle begins in the perfume salon. Bottles imported from Paris, Venice, and places that sound almost fictional are displayed like holy relics. You sniff, you sigh, you pretend to consider something understated, then select the one with the heaviest bottle and the price tag that makes the clerk blanch. Behind you, rivals circle, waiting to pounce on any sign of indecision. The air is thick with the scent of tuberose, rosewater, and the slightly desperate energy of old money clinging to relevance. You move on to hats. 3 are presented, each one more absurdly elaborate than the last. The first boasts a whole bird's nest, with decorative, not live, eggs. The second, a spray of peacock feathers so tall you wonder if you'll need a special carriage modification. The third, an avant-garde creation that looks suspiciously like an upside-down cake. You buy all 3, just to deny your enemies the satisfaction of wearing them first. Scarves are next, followed by a rapid-fire session of fan acquisition. The fans are judged not on practicality, but on how effectively they can signal I know something you don't from across a ballroom. Your cousin insists on buying a lace-trimmed one to wave dramatically during future scandals. All the while, your rivals prowl the aisles, their eyes darting between your purchases and the clerk's nervous hands. The true competition is not just who spends the most, but who spends it most memorably. At one point, you find yourself in a silent standoff over the last bolt of violet silk, a fabric so rare it's rumoured to change colour in the moonlight. After a tense moment, you offer to buy the whole bolt, have it delivered by evening, and send a thank you note to your vanquished foe's milliner. Civil war indeed. Every purchase is wrapped in tissue and triumph. Parcels are stacked high, porters scramble, and the shop manager personally thanks you with the desperate gratitude of a man who's just paid off his mortgage. By early afternoon, you're loaded down with more packages than common sense, and a sense of accomplishment that only comes from spending money in front of witnesses. You retire to the carriage, your entourage trailing behind, arms full and spirits higher still. As you ride home through the crowded streets, you spot Mrs. Wentworth's carriage, empty-handed for once. You wave, smile, and make a mental note to wear the impractical dress to next week's luncheon, just to prove that in the world of high society shopping, victory goes not to the sensible, but to the spectacularly overindulgent. Because in your world, shopping isn't about need. It's about legacy, leverage, and the pure joy of owning a hat so large it casts shade on your enemies before the sun even sets. Your hair is a daily science experiment, requiring hot irons, pomades, and enough decorative combs to arm a small militia. The current trend, hairstyles so tall that birds sometimes nest in them. Your scalp, suffering. Your pride, immeasurable. It begins before breakfast in a small dressing room filled with a gentle haze of powder and the distant scent of roasted hare. Your personal hairdresser arrives with a cart that would make a travelling apothecary blush. Pomades in tiny silver pots, mysterious tonics imported from Paris, and enough pins to map out a minor battlefield. There are heated curling rods, delicate brushes carved from tortoiseshell, and at least one gadget whose purpose is best described as aspirational. You take your seat like royalty awaiting coronation. A maid begins by gently detangling what remains of yesterday's efforts, her face the stoic mask of someone who's witnessed hair-related tragedy. As the comb glides through your hair, you try not to wince. You are brave, you remind yourself. You are a pioneer of follicles and of fashion. The first phase is the wash. Water is poured from a porcelain jug, then your hair is scrubbed with a soap so fragrant that it could double as a calling card. Naturally, the water is neither too hot nor too cold, but somehow always manages to be both. As your hair is gently blotted with an embroidered towel, you mentally prepare for what's to come. Phase 2, building the foundation. If nature has not provided you with a mane worthy of architectural marvels, never fear. There are pads, rolls, and the ever-mysterious rat, a tightly wound bundle of previous hair because waste not, want not. These are strategically pinned to your scalp, creating the scaffolding for a monument that would make the Tower of Babel jealous. Next comes the structure. Curls are coaxed into existence with irons heated over an open flame, a process that requires nerves of steel and the reflexes of a fencer. Your hairdresser works quickly, stacking, pinning and weaving until your head resembles a topographical map of the Appalachian Mountains. You remain perfectly still, knowing that one errant twitch could cause a cascade failure resulting in the loss of several hours' hard labour and most of your dignity. Once the desired height is achieved, usually somewhere between modest beehive and roosting stork, the decorating begins. Dozens of jewelled combs, tiny pearl pins and silk flowers are stabbed lovingly into place. A feather or two for drama, a delicate lace veil if you're feeling coy. If your hair isn't visible from the next county, are you even trying? Sometimes you wonder if the updo will ever come back down. Friends tell horror stories of cousins who had to sleep upright for fear of crushing a masterpiece, or who once hosted a moth in their coiffure for an entire afternoon. Your own scalp tingles with a mixture of triumph and mild regret. The price of glory is a faint perpetual headache, and a scalp so tightly bound that blinking twice in succession feels like rebellion. Wigs, of course, are the fallback for those days when inspiration or hair runs thin. Rows of powdered, curled and bejewelled hairpieces line your dressing table, each labelled for a different mood: subtle majesty, afternoon rivalry, full lunacy. The wigmaster visits monthly, armed with new creations and the uncanny ability to match hair colour by candlelight. You try on a few, marvelling at the illusion. Instant transformation, instant elevation, sometimes literal. At last, you stand before the mirror. The effect is staggering. You're 3 inches taller, 10 times more glamorous, and possibly a fire hazard. Your pride swells, outweighing the throbbing at your temples. Downstairs, someone calls for you. The morning parade of hats is about to begin, and your hair will be the runway. As you sweep through the house, neck held high, you feel invincible. Sure, your scalp may protest and birds may eye you covetously, but history will remember your courage. In the age of the ultimate updo, your hair isn't just a style, it's a declaration of victory. Dropping off a calling card is the 1860s equivalent of posting a thirst trap. You visit homes just long enough to be noticed, but not so long that anyone thinks you're actually interested in conversation. Every gesture is a subtle chess move. Every smile, a potential scandal. Your morning routine isn't complete without a stack of heavy cream-coloured calling cards, each one embossed, engraved, and ever so slightly perfumed, because anonymity is for people with nothing to prove. These cards are your golden ticket, your social currency, and your secret weapon in the daily battle for relevance. You keep them in a tiny silver case, which you flip open with the practiced flair of a card shark. Let them see the monogram. Let them wonder just how many other parlours you've graced today. You step into your carriage and survey your itinerary, which is less a list of friendly visits and more a tactical campaign. First stop, Mrs. Davenport, whose Tuesday brunches are legendary for both their soufflés and their subtle character assassinations. You hand your card to the butler, making sure to linger in the entryway just long enough for Mrs. Davenport's daughter to catch a glimpse of your ensemble, which is naturally new. You leave before anyone can corral you into actually sitting down. From there, it's a whirlwind. The Middleton house for a casual drop-in, translate casual as military manoeuvre, the Willoughby estate to pay respects to an aunt, whose main hobby is recalculating the order of social importance, and a strategic stop at the Fairfax residence, where your card might just be placed at the top of the mantel, or, if you've miscalculated, quietly relegated to the try-again-later pile. Timing is everything. Arrive too early and you risk looking desperate. Too late, and you're accused of neglect. The perfect visit is a Goldilocks affair, just right. Just long enough for the butler to remember your name and the lady of the house to wonder what you're up to. If you're lucky, you'll cross paths with other hopeful social climbers in the front hall, each of you feigning surprise at the other's presence, while privately tallying up victories and defeats. Every detail matters. The angle of your smile, the tilt of your hat, the way you hand off your card. Never with a bare hand, always with gloves on. No one wants to imagine the upper crust actually sweats. You exchange pleasantries, but never too many. and your goodbyes are always ambiguous, warm enough to keep the door open, cool enough to prevent actual intimacy. You want to be remembered, but only as a tantalizing possibility. The butler's reaction is its own form of performance review. A brisk nod and your card disappears into the coveted silver tray atop the parlour piano, prime social real estate. A less enthusiastic butler might file your card among the others, where it will languish beside the florist's receipts and bills from the dressmaker. You live in hope, or at least in the suspicion that hope is a useful emotion for those who lack cash. As you glide through the city, making your rounds, you begin to see the pattern, a finely woven web of obligations, hints, and silent threats. A visit here secures you a dinner invitation next week. A well-timed card there means your family's name will appear in the right column of next Sunday's newspaper. Forget to call on a new arrival, and suddenly you're outmaneuvered, your social standing as fragile as your last soufflé. You return home as the afternoon wanes, exhausted yet oddly invigorated. Your card case is lighter, your reputation, if you've played your pieces well, a little brighter. In this world, every door you darken, every card you drop, is both a promise and a warning. Social climbing isn't about friendship, it's about presence, reputation, and the subtle thrill of being just interesting enough to stay in the game. After all, in the Civil War's most rarefied circles, the right calling card is worth more than 1,000 words, provided, of course, you know exactly when to play it. You've mastered the art of communicating via fluttering fans and strategic umbrella twirls. A single flick means I see you, a certain angle means you're dead to me. Today, you decide to invent a new gesture, the double parasol twirl. The servants are confused, but the point is made. This is the world before texting, before social media, before you could destroy a rival's reputation with a casual subtweet. Here, messages are sent on the breeze, carefully coded, brilliantly subtle, and occasionally lost on the less observant. A social gathering isn't complete without the gentle snap of silk fans, the slow choreography of parasols spinning in the sun, and the silent drama of glances exchanged like clandestine telegrams. It starts the moment you leave the house. Your parasol, chosen not for practicality but for its colour coordination and potential as a weaponized accessory, is gripped just so. The day's social calendar is packed. A promenade in the park, a garden luncheon, perhaps a tense encounter with your greatest frenemy beneath the magnolia trees. Each event offers the promise of new alliances and fresh feuds, all waged in the silent language of folding fans and umbrella pivots. You stroll past Mrs. Willoughby, raising your fan in a flutter, just a hint of the wrist. This signals that you have noticed her, but are still reserving judgment about her new hairpiece. She, in turn, responds with a brisk snap and a cough, which, in this code, means your hat is enormous, but I will not say so directly. The servants glance nervously from one woman to the next, unsure if a duel or a lemonade break is about to commence. At the garden party, it's all about angle and timing. A parasol tilted slightly forward. I am listening, but only because I have to. Tilted back, I am open to gossip. Laid on the bench beside you, this conversation is over. Also, I have better things to do. You wield your parasol like a fencing foil, lightly tapping your knee when someone mentions the scandalous behaviour of the Smythe twins. The double parasol twirl is your latest creation, an audacious gesture meaning, not only do I see your drama, but I raise you a rumour. The assembled guests are stunned. The butler spills a tray of petit fours. Somewhere a rival is already plotting to imitate you. Fans too have their dialects. A slow fan over the face, intrigue. A brisk wave, impatience. Tapping the handle against your chin. I know a secret, but you'll have to bribe me. Dropping your fan altogether, nuclear social disaster, someone is about to cry, confess, or both. You once saw Aunt Cecilia collapse an entire engagement with 3 calculated flicks of a lace fan and a well-timed sniff. Young men and newcomers flounder in this sea of unspoken rules, their attempts at communication hamstrung by inexperience. One poor soul is still apologising for a parasol flourish that inadvertently implied someone's dog was ill-bred. Old hands, however, move through these exchanges with deadly accuracy, settling scores and forging alliances all before the soup course. Of course, sometimes the code is a little too effective. Whole friendships have dissolved over an ambiguous umbrella rotation. Rumours have blossomed into full-blown scandals because of a single ambiguous fan flutter. It's a high-wire act where the wrong gesture at the wrong time can see you seated next to your least favourite cousin at dinner, or worse, left off next month's invitation list entirely. You head home at sunset, emotionally exhausted but proud. Today you've sent 10 messages, delivered 3 subtle insults, and survived a near catastrophe involving a dropped glove and a misread eyebrow. The double parasol twirl has entered the local legend. As you hand your parasol to a baffled servant and ascend the steps, you wonder what signals tomorrow will bring. Because in your world, the true currency isn't gold or gossip. It's the silent, swirling ballet of fans and parasols. And for those clever enough to master the code, every day is an endless opportunity to speak volumes without ever uttering a word. Owning a dog is quaint. You prefer something a bit more extravagant. Monkeys, parrots, even a rumour of a baby alligator. The highlight of your week is parading your pets past your less imaginative friends, watching their envy turn as green as your parrot's feathers. In your world, pets aren't just companions. They're status symbols, conversation pieces, and, on occasion, walking or slithering rebuttals to your neighbour's sense of superiority. Why settle for a Labrador when you could have a lemur? Or 3? Every morning the menagerie assembles in the marble-floored foyer, each animal brushed, ribboned and ready for display like the cast of a very ambitious masquerade. Your parrot, naturally, is the star, a brilliant blur of emerald and indigo who has learned to say scandalous at precisely the right moment during tea. There's also a white cockatoo with an attitude problem and a vocabulary that would make a sailor blush. They take turns perching on your shoulder as you make your rounds, their plumes carefully dusted with powder that's probably more expensive than anything your cousins wear to church. But the birds are just the beginning. Today's promenade includes a pair of monkeys, dressed, of course, in tiny waistcoats and miniature bonnets. They scamper along the garden wall, occasionally tossing candied almonds at anyone who fails to admire them sufficiently. When guests arrive, the monkeys are trained to perform a synchronized bow, though sometimes this devolves into a small, adorable riot. Guests pretend to be charmed, your rivals pretend not to be jealous. Both are lying. The latest addition to the family, a rumour whispered with delicious glee, is a baby alligator. He resides in a custom-built marble fountain in the conservatory, basking beneath a heated lamp and occasionally startling guests who come too close to the hors d'oeuvres table. Your mother insists he's just visiting, but you've already commissioned a velvet pillow and a nameplate. Naming him after a distant uncle is the ultimate inside joke. Some people have cat hair on their clothes. You have peacock feathers everywhere, tucked into bouquets, trailing from hats, artfully arranged in vases. One particularly vain peacock patrols the garden paths, pausing only to admire his reflection in the silver watering cans. He has more admirers than most people at the dinner table, and he knows it. You've been known to borrow a plume or two for a soiree, sparking another round of whispered speculation. Is that a new feather, or just another display of excess? Even your less exotic pets have a role to play. The family's spaniel, ignored by the monkeys and shunned by the parrot, exists solely for photo opportunities and for chasing away less fashionable pigeons. The tortoise, a dowager in her own right, wears a custom bonnet at the annual garden party and is always placed near the punch bowl for luck. The logistics are considerable. The household staff includes a bird wrangler, a monkey minder, and a reptile consultant who insists on regular feeding schedules and a surprisingly high salary. Dinners must be coordinated around parrot nap times. The monkeys demand treats for good behaviour, and the peacock once refused to eat for 2 days after being denied a starring role at the last cotillion. But the payoff is immense. Every stroll through the park becomes a parade. Every social call is an opportunity for surprise and admiration. Children press their noses to the gates, desperate for a glimpse. Adults murmur, sometimes with horror, often with envy. The weekly society pages speculate wildly about your next acquisition. Ostrich, capybara, a pair of lovebirds trained to reenact famous duels. The possibilities are endless. In this world, pets aren't just friends. They're declarations of taste, symbols of abundance, and, perhaps most importantly, living proof that you can always outdo the neighbours. And if your alligator learns to bow before the season's end, you just might win the unofficial contest that matters most. Being the talk of the town, one feather and fang at a time. Why stop at gold flatware? Your family now owns a gold-plated chamber pot and a diamond-studded toothpick holder. A new rumour circulates. Someone in town is said to have a silver-lined horse trough. The horror. It starts, as all these things do, with innocent intent. Perhaps a modest gold-rimmed goblet here, an engraved napkin ring there, simple touches meant to impress a dinner guest or two. But soon, the urge to outshine becomes insatiable. Before you know it, the house sparkles like a jewellery store caught in a midday sunbeam. Every surface, it seems, begs for embellishment. After all, what's the point of wealth if it isn't winking at you from every possible angle? At breakfast, you butter your toast with a gold-handled knife and stir your tea with a spoon that could pay a miner's salary for a year. The plates, inlaid with a pattern of gilded laurel leaves, because nothing says bon appétit quite like knowing your eggs are sitting on half an ounce of precious metal. Even the salt cellar glints with opulence. It's rumoured to have once belonged to Napoleon. At least, that's what your father tells guests after his third glass of sherry. But the race doesn't end at the table. Soon, it's a question of where else one can insert gold. The chamber pot is discreetly displayed, for those with the right connections, of course, a sparkling testament to the family's commitment to comfort and absurdity in equal measure. House guests pretend not to notice, but you catch them glancing, awestruck, as if half expecting cherubs to fly out and offer them mints. The toothpick holder is next, diamond-studded, shaped like a miniature urn, and reportedly the source of a minor scandal when a neighbour was caught admiring it a little too enthusiastically. No one has ever actually used it. Imagine sullying all that sparkle with something as pedestrian as a piece of food. Still, its presence sends a clear message. Here, even dental hygiene is a luxury pursuit. Your mother, not to be outdone, commissions a set of gold-plated fireplace tongs and a gilded coal scuttle. Visitors gather around the hearth, gazing at the glowing embers and wondering if even the ashes are worth a fortune. You suspect someone has started dusting the family dog with gold powder. At this point, who would notice? The arms race intensifies. Word spreads that the Everhart family across town has silver-plated flower pots, an affront so grievous that your aunt organises an accidental garden tour just to show off her own, now gold-leafed rose trellises. The local paper whispers that Mrs. Radcliffe is rumoured to bathe her cat in a basin lined with gold filigree. She denies it, but the damage is done. The cat has never looked more smug. The grandest scandal, however, erupts when someone claims to have spotted a silver-lined horse trough at the estate of a newly rich neighbour. Outrage! What will the animals expect next, velvet feed bags? The coachman is dispatched for reconnaissance. Upon his return he confirms the rumours are true, and the water sparkles in the sunlight. The family convenes an emergency meeting to discuss options. The butler suggests gold-leafed oats. The stable boy proposes matching golden horseshoes for every steed. Of course, all this gilding comes with hazards. More than one guest has chipped a tooth on an ornamental dessert fork. The cleaning staff have weekly nervous breakdowns, armed only with soft cloths and whispered prayers. The local goldsmith is on permanent retainer, his children now educated on the proceeds of cutlery repairs alone. Yet for all the stress, there's a peculiar satisfaction. Every golden bauble is a reminder that you're winning at the game of luxury. Neighbours can whisper, rivals can plot. But you, with your gold-plated chamber pot and jewel-encrusted trivialities, are the reigning monarch of excess. Because in the luxury arms race there are no prizes for subtlety, only trophies for the most gloriously, ostentatiously impractical shine. No wealthy home is complete without a full orchestra on call. Musicians sit in the hallway, ready to strike up a waltz the moment you sigh. Occasionally you make them play Yankee Doodle backwards, just to see if anyone notices. You awaken not to the rooster's crow or the clatter of breakfast, but to the soft tuning of violins just beyond your bedroom door. A gentle trill, a hushed clearing of a clarinet, these are your morning birdsong. The musicians have been up for hours, practicing scales and tuning their instruments to the perfect pitch. Their job description is simple: provide ambiance at the drop of a silk handkerchief and, if possible, look grateful about it. After your morning routine, you make your way down the grand staircase, pausing only when the flutist launches into your favourite sonata. The hall is alive with music, every note calculated to make you feel as if you're perpetually gliding through a fairy tale. Family members take turns requesting themes for their entrances. Your uncle insists on Rule Britannia, while your sister prefers a dramatic overture, heavy on the timpani, for maximum impact. Breakfast, naturally, is served to a gentle serenade. It's hard to feel anxious about the state of the nation when 3 cellists and a harpist are doing their best to drown out the sound of your relatives debating the price of flour. You lift your cup of chocolate and nod to the first violinist, who responds with a subtle trill, a secret language that says, "Yes, I too am tired of this waltz." Throughout the day, the orchestra remains ever vigilant. No event is too minor for a soundtrack. Reading letters, a soft string quartet sets the mood. Receiving guests, the orchestra swells with anticipation as each carriage pulls up. Sometimes you make a game of it, challenging the musicians to improvise a march as the neighbours arrive, or to play something suspiciously French when your aunt, notorious for her patriotic zeal, comes to call. Special occasions call for elaborate performances. Birthdays, anniversaries, or the spontaneous decision to rearrange the sitting room furniture all require musical accompaniment. The musicians, dressed in crisp black and perpetually underpaid, switch seamlessly from stately polonaises to scandalous mazurkas, depending on the drama of the day. Occasionally, a guest with more confidence than talent will request to join in, resulting in performances so memorable that the musicians must stifle their laughter with their sheet music. The true test of their devotion comes during those long, awkward dinners when conversation dwindles and tempers fray. The orchestra senses the mood, shifting from cheerful minuets to soothing adagios as your parents trade pointed remarks about the price of gold-plated doorknobs. Your younger cousin, never one for subtlety, once tried to bribe the trumpeter to play a hunting call in the middle of a particularly dull sermon. The result was chaos, musicians hiding behind potted palms, family members torn between outrage and poorly suppressed giggles. For the musicians, it's a balancing act. Provide the perfect soundtrack while blending so seamlessly into the background that they become part of the wallpaper, albeit a very expensive melodic wallpaper. You suspect they keep a running tally of how many times you sigh, how many times the neighbours glare enviously from across the street at your impromptu afternoon concert, how many times the dog joins in during particularly dramatic passages. By nightfall, the orchestra's work is never truly done. They lull you to sleep with gentle lullabies, or, when insomnia strikes, with impromptu ragtime just to shake things up. You lie in bed, half listening to a muffled rehearsal of Yankee Doodle played in reverse, and wonder, do the truly wealthy ever get tired of always having a soundtrack? But as the house grows quiet and the final notes fade, you know the truth. In this world, silence is never golden. Real status is measured in melody, harmony, and the certainty that, at any moment, your life can be scored to perfection by your very own, always on-call orchestra. Your correspondence is a full-time job. You compose letters on scented paper, sealed with wax, and stuffed with not-so-humble brags about your new chandelier or rumoured engagement. You receive just as many, each a subtle contest in passive aggression. Every morning after breakfast you retreat to the writing desk, a hulking monument of mahogany and mother of pearl strategically positioned in the sunniest corner of the drawing room. There, armed with a tray of monogrammed stationery, imported violet ink and a quiver of feathered pens, you prepare to unleash a flurry of news, opinions, and not-so-veiled boasts on an unsuspecting world. The ritual is meticulous. First, you select your paper. Pale blue for distant relatives, softens the blow of forgotten birthdays, crisp cream for society friends, and pale rose for rivals, because nothing says I'm winning like perfumed insults delivered with style. Your signature scent, a blend of lavender, a dash of rosewater, and just enough orange blossom to hint at citrus groves, wafts from every page, ensuring your presence is felt before the envelope is even opened. The first letter is always to your mother's dearest friend, a woman known for her thorough readings and detailed replies. You report the latest triumphs. Dearest Mrs. Pembroke, we so enjoyed last evening's supper. Your silver candlesticks gleamed beautifully, though perhaps not quite as brightly as our new Venetian chandelier, 12 arms, gaslit, imported at great expense. You mention your cousin's new suitor, dreadfully tall but in a distinguished way, and drop hints about an upcoming trip to Saratoga Springs, just in case anyone feels like inviting you to their country villa. The next missive is to your greatest rival, a woman whose letters are so frosted with politeness they could chill a cup of tea. Dearest Clara, I do hope this finds you well after the unfortunate incident with your dressmaker. The lilac shade was daring. I suppose fashion in the provinces is always evolving. The goal, of course, is to sound supportive while planting seeds of existential doubt about her colour choices for the entire season. Replies arrive daily, carried by footmen, or, for the truly urgent, delivered by breathless errand boys. Each letter is an event, envelopes thick with anticipation and a whiff of social subtext. You savour your rival's careful reports. We are all well here, except for poor Papa's gout. Aggravated, no doubt, by the stress of having to order new carpeting for the ballroom. How I envy your simple life in the city. Translation: they have a new ballroom. Some letters are marathons of passive aggression, entire paragraphs devoted to recent purchases. The new pianoforte is a delight. Mother insists the mahogany finish is the only thing worth listening to in the house, or sly digs at absent friends. Do send my regards to Mrs. Lennox if you see her. I trust her garden is flourishing despite last year's unfortunate potato blight. Compliments are given with the softest of blades. Your dinner sounded charming. How clever of you to host something so intimate. But correspondence is not all contest and cunning. Occasionally you slip genuine affection between the lines. You ask about a friend's ill uncle, or offer to send a recipe for lemon cake that's been in your family since before the revolution. You read and reread the warmest replies, holding them close on those rare rainy afternoons when even the grandest chandelier cannot quite banish the gloom. Letter writing is, in truth, both performance and lifeline, a theatre of status, wit, and shifting alliances. The stack of completed notes is whisked away by the butler, each one sealed with a monogrammed wafer of scarlet wax and the faintest hint of victory. By day's end, your hand is cramped, your inkwell depleted, and your spirits, or ego, delightfully restored. Because in this world, reputations are built and broken one scented sheet at a time. And as you watch the footman carry your missives out into the world, you know you've played your part in the grand, glittering game of epistolary one-upmanship, where every word is both a weapon and a work of art. The help are everywhere: cooks, maids, coachmen, the all-important butler. There's a rigid hierarchy, and heaven help anyone who confuses the footman for the underfootman. Today, you invent a new title, the powdered wig polisher. You wake to the sound of quiet efficiency, the gentle clatter of breakfast trays, the rhythmic sweep of a broom, the faint echo of someone, somewhere, rehearsing the difference between yes ma'am and certainly miss. In this house, the staff move through the corridors like well-rehearsed ghosts, present, indispensable, and mostly invisible unless you require something polished, pressed, or miraculously made to reappear after you've lost it. Again, the day's operations begin below stairs. The kitchen is a realm of its own, ruled with an iron whisk by Mrs. Hargrove, the cook, who is rumoured to possess supernatural powers over gravy, and an uncanny ability to detect a stolen tart at 50 paces. Maids hurry to and fro, starched aprons crisp, each one assigned to a specific floor, room, or, for the very unlucky, the family's extensive collection of porcelain figurines. No one envies the figurine maid. Then there are the footmen, impeccably dressed, each in livery that is at once a badge of honour and a daily battle against gravy stains. There's a strict pecking order. The first footman is trusted with carrying in the soup, while the second is relegated to less visible tasks, like polishing the stair banisters or delivering cryptic notes between relatives who have stopped speaking over a misplaced centrepiece. You learn early that the butler is not to be trifled with. Mr. Pennington is a master of discretion, a sentinel at the gates of domestic order. He controls the wine, the silver, the guest lists, and, if the rumours are true, the occasional family secret. He always seems to appear just as you're about to do something unwise, say, attempt to serve yourself tea, or, heaven forbid, set foot in the cellar. You try not to take it personally. Above stairs there is a parallel universe of unwritten rules. You're expected to know each staff member by title, if not by name, and to never, ever ask the cook to fetch a carriage, or the coachman to arrange the flowers. You once made the mistake of complimenting the underfootman on his dusting technique, only to be met with an icy silence that lasted until the next full moon. In your house, new positions appear almost as fast as new fashions. The powdered wig polisher is your latest invention, dreamed up after last week's disaster when Aunt Millicent's wig arrived at breakfast, looking less aristocratic cloud and more collapsed soufflé. The chosen candidate now wields a miniature brush, a dab of pomade, and the solemn knowledge that their handiwork could make or break a family portrait. Communication between the worlds of upstairs and downstairs is a delicate art, practiced through bells, notes, and occasionally a meaningful glare. Meals are choreographed with military precision. If a fork is out of place, if the soup is not piping hot, if a guest receives a slightly less chilled glass than their neighbour, a conference is convened in the pantry to discuss possible causes, usually involving a conspiracy between the undermaid and the second footman. Despite the strict hierarchy, life below stairs is a drama in its own right. Alliances are forged, gossip exchanged, and feuds waged, sometimes over who controls the key to the linen closet, sometimes over the affections of the stable boy. The annual staff cricket match is legendary, with rivalries so fierce they nearly rival the great dining room silverware incident of '61. Yet, for all the lines drawn and protocols observed, there's an undeniable pride. The house runs because they run it, and you, in your silk slippers and starched cravat, know full well that without the tireless army below stairs, there would be no banquets, no balls, and certainly no hope for Aunt Millicent's wig. So tonight, as you call for a cup of cocoa and contemplate promoting the footman to assistant in charge of candlewick trimming, spare a thought for the real architects of your daily luxury, the unsung staff, upstairs, downstairs, and everywhere in between. Prohibition on imported liquor? Pfft. The cellar is stocked with champagne from family friends in France. You sip absinthe in the parlour and giggle about the latest embargo, while the world outside gets hungrier by the day. On paper, the war has ushered in a new age of sacrifice. There are posters everywhere urging thrift, virtue, and moderation. But inside your family's townhouse, the rules of wartime austerity are little more than decorative suggestions, like the no sweets before supper commandment posted on the pantry door. After all, why should a minor international conflict interfere with your daily glass of something sparkly? The parlour has become your private speakeasy, a softly lit cocoon where the flicker of gaslight plays off cut-glass decanters and silver-rimmed glasses. Each evening, you and your select circle gather on embroidered couches, listening to news of rationing, blockade, and shortages with the same interest you reserve for rumours about your distant cousins, mildly amused, rarely alarmed. The butler, who has seen more embargoes than birthdays, glides through the room with a practised discretion. He pours a discreet measure of Bordeaux or a scandalous thimbleful of cognac, depending on the guest's mood and the general level of secrecy required. Champagne, of course, is served only to those who can be trusted not to mention it outside these walls, a fact that only heightens its effervescence. You toast to resourcefulness and the ever-helpful friends abroad. The last crate was labelled plumbing supplies, your brother winks, raising his glass. I've never known pipes to taste so lively. The room ripples with laughter. Absinthe, emerald and mysterious, is reserved for particularly daring evenings. The sugar cube ritual is half performance, half rebellion. You balance the slotted spoon, drip the ice water, watch the liquid swirl into a cloudy elixir, and raise your glass to the possibility that tomorrow's breakfast might be just a little blurrier than usual. Even as food prices soar and neighbours trade stories of hardship, your family's chef conjures multi-course dinners with an ease bordering on the miraculous. The key, you're told, is having friends in the right places, and occasionally sending a well-timed letter or well-filled purse to a supplier willing to look the other way. You once tried to imagine a true wartime meal, beans, hardtack, water, but the experiment ended after 5 minutes and 2 bitter complaints. Still, appearances must be maintained. Outwardly, you make a show of rationing. The pantry is kept suspiciously tidy for the benefit of visiting do-gooders, with jars labelled parsnip surprise and dried turnip delight. There is much hand-wringing at the dinner table about the unbearable privations of using domestic rather than imported lemon zest. Guests with less refined palates are quietly steered toward the weak cider and reminded often that sacrifice is patriotic. Behind closed doors, though, the party never stops. The latest shipment of Madeira is celebrated with a midnight toast. Someone proposes a game. Guess which delicacy came through the blockade and which was simply acquired from a rival family's larder. There are whispered tales of chocolate smuggled in hollowed-out candlesticks and of a cheese wheel so rare it's hidden behind a false wall in the cellar. The only thing more thrilling than breaking the rules is knowing exactly who you can trust to keep your secrets. You know, deep down, that the world outside is changing. You hear the distant echoes of hardship, the rattling of supply carts, the complaints of neighbours whose pantries are truly bare. But here, within these walls, the war is just another topic for conversation, another reason to laugh, toast, and plan tomorrow's menu with an air of delighted mischief. So you raise your glass, savour the forbidden bubbles, and indulge for another night, knowing that while history may frown on decadence, it rarely remembers the details, especially when the absinthe is this good. The war looms, but you're not worried. Family connections mean you'll volunteer at a hospital for an hour, then disappear to a spa retreat. You know someone who bribed a colonel with a year's supply of caviar to avoid enlistment. For most, the threat of conscription is a looming shadow, a constant reminder that no one, in theory, is truly exempt from the call to serve. For you, however, it's less an existential threat and more a mildly inconvenient scheduling conflict, sandwiched between your fencing lesson and a standing appointment with the family masseuse. The draft notice arrives, delivered with a certain sheepishness by a local official who's known your father since before the last war. You accept it with an elaborate sigh, feigning concern. The envelope, unread, is soon lost among invitations to tea and the latest Parisian hat catalogues. Of course, it would be unseemly not to do something, so you offer your volunteer services. This, in practice, means a well-documented hour spent touring the local military hospital, enough time to smile graciously at recovering officers, sign a commemorative book, and deliver a basket of imported oranges. Photographs are taken, words like sacrifice and service are used, and before anyone can ask you to actually change a bandage, you're back in your carriage and on the way to the nearest mineral springs. Your family has a gift for navigating such challenges. Uncles who are essential to the running of the railroad, cousins who become sudden experts in agricultural policy. Everyone finds their loophole. You attend dinner parties where the latest trick isn't learning to waltz, but discovering which relative managed to secure the most creative deferment. The stories are endless. One friend was diagnosed by a compliant physician with a severe aversion to loud noises, a shocking medical condition that, oddly, doesn't prevent him from attending the opera twice a week. Bribery is an art form, discreetly practiced and never ever discussed above a whisper. You recall a particularly bold acquaintance who gifted a colonel an entire case of brandy, only to later receive a note excusing him from duty on account of delicate digestion. Others, more inventive, send rare delicacies, smoked salmon, caviar, candied fruit for the cause, of course. The more public-minded supplement their bribes with lavish donations to regimental funds or charity balls, ensuring their names are inscribed on the town's honour roll, in gold leaf naturally. Still, a little theatre is required. When acquaintances visit, you're quick to lament the nervous strain brought on by news of the draft, all while reclining in your mother's favourite fainting chair. You produce the hospital volunteer certificate at a moment's notice, always available, especially when dinner conversation threatens to turn serious. Your mother commiserates with you in public, gently reminding anyone listening of your fragile constitution and the tragic consequences that might arise from excessive exposure to the outdoors. Rumours swirl as they always do. Did you hear about the Cartwright boy? Sent to the front for 3 whole days before he accidentally sprained his wrist playing croquet. The Wallace twins? Declared unfit after a mysterious outbreak of hives, cured the moment the recruiting officer left town. It becomes a contest who can avoid service with the most creativity, the least visible effort, and ideally a touch of humour. In quieter moments, you wonder what life is really like for those who have no connections, no conditions, no family friends with the power to turn war into an inconvenience. But that thought, like the draft notice itself, is quickly set aside, tucked into a drawer with other unpleasant realities. After all, the mineral baths are calling, and your next appointment is already waiting. So you glide through the war on a cushion of privilege and creative excuse-making, surrounded by others who do the same. When the subject of bravery comes up, you raise your glass, salute your own survival skills, and toast the age-old art of staying out of harm's way, preferably with caviar. Why sweat through the city heat when you can take the private rail car to Saratoga Springs? You lounge in mineral baths, gossip about who's marrying whom, and complain about the local oysters. Too brainy, obviously. Summer in the city is for those with nowhere else to go. For everyone else, everyone with a little imagination and a lot of money, the season's true social scene migrates north, following the siren call of Saratoga Springs, Newport, or any place with a reputable mineral bath and sufficiently crisp linen service. Your bags are packed by someone else, your trunk is full of hats specifically for breezy afternoons, and the private rail car is waiting. You're not sure where half your luggage ends up, but that's a problem for the help and future you. The journey itself is its own spectacle. The car is fitted with plush velvet seats, a mahogany sideboard groaning under the weight of pastries, and a hat rack so full it could double as a small boutique. You and your friends recline as the scenery blurs by, sipping lemonade, nibbling on tea cakes and pretending not to notice the peasants working the fields outside. Your most pressing concern, whether to arrive draped in silk or something slightly more understated for the afternoon promenade. Arrival at the Springs is a flurry of porters, trunks and greetings so effusive they border on competitive. You're swept into the hotel's marble lobby, where your name is pronounced with just the right amount of awe. The air smells of lilac polish and the faint, inescapable tang of sulphur. No one dwells on the fact that you're here for your health. It's code for socializing without the city's judgmental humidity. Your days are a carefully choreographed dance of leisure and low-grade intrigue. The morning mineral bath is obligatory, even if you privately suspect the only thing it's curing is boredom. The hot water is said to draw out impurities, which, judging by the faces around you, are mostly small-town anxieties and last winter's scandals. You slip into the milky blue water, feign a sigh of deep relief, and take stock of the room. Mrs. Pemberley, chin lifted, plotting her daughter's next engagement. Mr. Ashcroft, elbow deep in business cards and marriage proposals. After your soak, you join the afternoon's walking party along the tree-lined avenues. Here, social manoeuvring is as important as any medicinal tonic. You gossip about the latest elopement. Did you hear? 2 train stops past Poughkeepsie, no less. The ongoing debate over who has the best carriage and the perennial disappointment of the local oysters. Everyone claims to be here for the waters, but it's the parade of fortunes, fashions and fresh rumours that truly draws the crowd. Meals are long, languid affairs. You nibble on chilled cucumber sandwiches and watch as ambitious mothers try to seat their eligible children in the path of the richest widower. Conversation drifts from the season's fashions to the unspeakable horror of last night's overcooked quail. Champagne is poured, toasts are made to health and happiness, and at least one glass is always raised to absent friends, a polite euphemism for rivals currently stranded in the city. Evenings bring concerts, card games, and inevitably more plotting. You waltz beneath gaslit chandeliers, the music echoing through halls lined with marble and ambition. Sometimes you slip away to the veranda, where the night air is heavy with the scent of hydrangeas and expectation. You laugh, you sigh, you whisper plans for next week's picnic, weather permitting, scandal guaranteed. As the days blend together in a haze of salt air, mineral water and thinly veiled competition, you realise you haven't solved any great social problems, just reshuffle the cast and change the scenery. But that's what travel is for. Escaping, indulging, and making sure you're always just far enough away to be missed, but never forgotten. Because in the world of the travelling salon, the journey isn't about where you go, it's about who sees you getting there. And of course, whether the oysters ever improve. Owning your own opera box is a sign you've arrived. You spend entire evenings peering through opera glasses, judging costumes, and only half watching the show. The main event is seeing and being seen. The evening begins with the ritual procession up the grand marble steps, your slippers muffled by the scarlet carpet. The lobby glows with gaslight, the air thick with anticipation, perfume, and a faint whiff of mothballs clinging to old fur wraps. Your family sweeps into the theatre, coats whisked away by an army of ushers. As you glide to your private box, you pass the lesser mortals lined up for gallery seats, bravely pretending their view isn't obstructed by the world's tallest hat. Your opera box, perched like a miniature palace above the stage, is upholstered in enough velvet to smother a small city. Cushions are plumped, a silver tray awaits for your bonbons, and opera glasses, monogrammed, naturally sit ready for their real task, strategic surveillance. The box's location is key. Not too high, that's for the merely wealthy, not too low, too accessible to the rabble, but just right for optimal visibility to every other important box. The overture begins, and the theatre settles, except in the boxes, where the music is background to a ballet of subtle nods, sly glances, and the occasional daring wave of a lace fan. You peer through your glasses, scanning the other boxes. There's the Ashcrofts, leaning conspicuously forward, the Radcliffes feigning rapt attention while passing a flask behind their velvet curtain. Your mother, expert in all things operatic and otherwise, whispers a running commentary. That dress is new. That necklace is borrowed. That laugh is as fake as last year's engagement. On stage the singers emote heroically, but in your box, emotion is measured in eyebrow raises and the arch of a well-gloved wrist. You judge the costumes, too garish. The set, surprisingly modest. And most importantly, the guest list. Someone arrives late, a deliberate move, calculated for maximum disruption and whispers. The orchestra swells, but your heart races only when a rival box is suddenly illuminated for all to see, its occupants awash in the glow of 1,000 jealous glances. Intermission is a competitive sport. You drift out into the corridor, eyes scanning, lips set in a half-smile, as introductions are made and gossip is exchanged with the rapid-fire efficiency of telegraph operators. You admire hats, compliment capes, and trade news about everything except the actual plot of the opera. No one remembers it anyway. The snack bar offers light refreshments, but the true feast is the buffet of news. Who's courting whom? Who's in debt? Who's dared to arrive in last season's velvet? Back in your box, you sink into cushions with just the right degree of languid boredom, signalling to the theatre that you're both above and of the spectacle. The final act unfolds, and you half-watch the stage, occasionally applauding in sync with the crowd, but more often exchanging silent reviews with your neighbours across the horseshoe of boxes. The cast bows, the curtain falls, but the night is far from over. You linger, savouring the trickle of admiration as others glance upward, silently envying your view, your box, your presence. You drop a glove, accidentally of course, so it can be returned tomorrow by a hopeful suitor or an ambitious rival angling for a dinner invitation. It's all part of the game. Finally you descend the stairs, wrapped in velvet and satisfaction, the music still humming in your ears. Outside, the night air is cool, the city's lights twinkle, and you know that tonight you are seen by all who matter. The opera may be over, but the performance never really ends, not in the cult of the velvet box where every glance is applause, and every entrance an encore. You can't have a sleep story about rich people without at least one duel. Whether it's over a slight at the masquerade or the last bottle of imported brandy, the duelling pistols are dusted off. Someone suggests a duel with breadsticks. It's not declined. The art of the duel is, by the Civil War era, more performance than peril. Still, it's the ultimate test of status, a last desperate gasp of old-world honour performed for an audience who'd rather gossip than grieve. The invitations are delivered by trembling valets, on monogrammed cards that hint ever so politely at possible death by breakfast. You receive yours after an especially heated argument at the card table, though you barely remember the offence, something about the improper folding of a cravat, or maybe a sarcastic remark about the soup. At first, you treat the challenge with all the seriousness of a dinner reservation, but word travels fast and soon the house is in uproar. Maids flutter with excitement, footmen place bets, and the cook, always a romantic, prepares a breakfast fit for the survivor, and discreetly a commemorative cake just in case. Someone's cousin claims to be an expert in seconds, the official role of the best friend and unofficial therapist who stands by to offer handkerchiefs and plausible excuses to flee. The rules are arcane and exquisitely detailed. 10 paces, back to back, turn on the count of 3, and don't you dare ruin the lawn. Pistols are retrieved from an heirloom box, engraved, unused since the Great Radish Dispute of 1847. They are polished, loaded, and presented on a silver tray. The duelling grounds are selected just beside the rose bushes, far enough from the breakfast room windows to avoid shattering the piece or the glass. As dawn approaches, the air brims with drama. Family members appear in robes and elaborate sleeping caps, pretending they happen to be passing by. The butler supervises with the cool detachment of someone who's seen too many of these to be impressed. For those feeling less bloodthirsty, the pistols at dawn motif gives way to slightly less dangerous alternatives. Fencing foils, croquet mallets, a spirited round of billiards, or, when tempers run low and spirits high, a best of 3 with baguettes or cucumber sandwiches. On this particular morning, you're handed a pistol in one hand and, inexplicably, a crusty breadstick in the other, just in case. Your second whispers, clearly hoping for the less tragic, more digestible outcome. The rules are clarified, no aiming for the face, no soiling of heirloom linens, and under no circumstances should anyone scuff the new boots. The duel begins. You march 10 paces, adrenaline mingling with sleepiness and last night's sherry. Turn, aim, and at the crucial moment, your rival drops his pistol and brandishes a baguette with surprising flair. A second later, you're locked in the most genteel of battles, fencing with baked goods to the applause and discreet laughter of the assembled crowd. The cook sighs with relief. The butler hides a smile. Someone's grandmother wins $5 on a side bet. In the end, no one is injured, except perhaps the breadstick, which meets a noble but crumbly end. honour is declared satisfied. Apologies are exchanged in the manner of the absurdly wealthy, with a handshake, a brandy, and the vague promise never to speak of it again, unless the story is especially entertaining. The duelists retire for a hearty breakfast, trading compliments and breadcrumbs. By noon, the whole event is already being recounted with dramatic embellishment in parlours across town. The legend of the duel of the breadsticks will live on, inspiring future generations to defend their honour with wit, style, and ideally something edible. Because in the world of the filthy rich, even the most ancient traditions are improved with a little bit of spectacle, a touch of absurdity, and a strong sense of self-preservation. All this wealth demands a retreat. Your family's mansion boasts a secret room behind the library, filled with emergency supplies, mostly more wine and cigars. You spend a rainy afternoon ranking the relative comfort of velvet couches. It isn't enough to simply be rich, one must also occasionally disappear. After all, a mansion's greatest luxury is not its size but its ability to swallow its owners whole, tucking them away from prying eyes, tedious callers, and, on particularly scandalous days, the local society pages. You know every creak of the floorboards leading to the hidden door, a panel disguised behind the complete works of Sir Walter Scott. With a practiced flick, the panel swings open to reveal the mansion's worst-kept secret, the hideaway. Inside, the room glows with the hushed light of shaded lamps and the deep reds of velvet curtains. Plush couches, each more decadent than the last, beckon from every corner. Here, the air is tinged with the faint scent of tobacco, old paper, and somehow the promise of never being asked to host a dinner party again. The walls are lined with shelves, not just for books but for essentials. Expensive bottles, imported chocolates, a half-dozen cigars, and a stash of candied ginger for when someone gets the vapours. You claim your favourite corner, a velvet chaise that seems to mould itself around you with just the right degree of lazy luxury. Your siblings follow suit, sprawling across the remaining seats like cats sunning themselves in a patch of rare peace. There's a ritual to the hideaway. Slippers are exchanged for shoes, tight collars are loosened, and, if the mood strikes, someone produces a deck of cards for a game of high-stakes, low-stress whist. The cook, sworn to secrecy, delivers a tray of delicacies through a dumbwaiter so old it might qualify as an antique in its own right. On the rainiest days, the room becomes your unofficial headquarters, a war room for evading tedious obligations. I'm terribly sorry, but they simply can't be found, your mother tells the persistent neighbour in the parlour above. Perhaps they've gone for a walk, or are deep in their studies. Meanwhile, you're deep in a debate about which of the couches offers the optimal nap-to-snack ratio. Votes are cast, arguments are made, someone proposes adding a hammock for variety. Your father counters with the radical suggestion of installing a small wine fountain. There's an art to hiding well. The goal is not to vanish completely, people might worry, or worse, gossip about your absence. The point is to be close enough to overhear the news of the day, but far enough that you can pretend you heard it last. Occasionally you pop up from the hideaway, tousle your hair artfully, and remark on the terrible weather before retreating again. To the uninitiated, it appears you're simply meditative. In truth, you're avoiding yet another lecture on the virtues of early morning walks. The panic room, as it's sometimes called in jest, is also fully equipped for emergencies. A small crate of imported cheese for comfort, blank notebooks for venting about the latest scandal, a decoy chess set for those desperate to appear industrious when discovered mid-lounge. There's even a bell to summon the butler, though you try to use it sparingly. Part of the fun is feeling just a little bit rogue. Of course, sometimes the sanctuary is breached. A cousin discovers the secret door, a persistent aunt follows the scent of sherry, or the family dog stumbles in, trailing a trail of muddy paw prints over 3 generations of velvet. In those moments, the room becomes a confessional, a site for whispered plotting, or simply a cosy den for waiting out whatever minor social hurricane rages above. Eventually the rain lets up and you emerge, restored and blissfully unconcerned with the world's demands. The hideaway, with its velvety embrace and air of gentle rebellion, has done its job. You smooth your hair, straighten your cuffs, and prepare to face the masses again, at least until the next afternoon shower. Because true wealth isn't just about being seen. Sometimes it's about the joy of not being found. Your offspring are raised by tutors, governesses, and a rotating cast of terrifying French nannies. They speak 5 languages by age 10 but can't tie their own shoes. Their birthday parties are legendary, featuring fireworks and occasionally a tame bear. Childhood in your world is a finely choreographed spectacle, every bit as strategic as a waltz in the ballroom or a well-timed social visit. The nursery is larger than most people's houses, bathed in the filtered light of stained glass windows and lined with enough stuffed animals to populate a minor kingdom. The wallpaper is imported. The blocks are hand-carved. The rocking horse is rumoured to have belonged to an obscure European prince. Each day begins with lessons, not from a single schoolmarm, but from a battalion of subject experts. There's Latin at dawn, fencing before breakfast, and a lecture on etiquette while being laced into boots by the under-governess. The over-governess naturally only supervises. The children recite poetry while balancing on a cushion, practice their handwriting with goose-quill pens, and learn arithmetic by counting the number of pearls on mother's evening gown. When they falter, a stern-faced Swiss tutor reminds them that excellence is the family's greatest heirloom, followed closely by the antique teething ring and the portrait of Aunt Millicent's parrot. Playtime, of course, is equally regulated. Games of croquet devolve into philosophical debates, and dolls' tea parties become lessons in advanced negotiation. The youngest learns to bribe the butler with bonbons. The eldest, already an expert in plausible deniability, claims no knowledge of how the frog got into the inkwell or why the family dog now answers to His Royal Highness. No one is fooled, least of all the nannies. Speaking of nannies, they cycle through with the changing seasons, each more formidable than the last. Madame Lefebvre, whose glare can curdle cream, oversees French lessons with the efficiency of a drill sergeant. Miss Peabody, imported from England, insists on daily constitutional walks to build character and shins. Herr Dr. Stein from Vienna is responsible for music instruction, though rumour has it he's hiding from several disappointed opera companies. At the mere mention of bedtime, the children flee in 5 directions, only to be corralled with the promise of a new clockwork toy or a bedtime story in Italian. Meals are a chance for performance. At breakfast, the children must recite a proverb in 3 languages and bow to the cook, a tradition started by the last French nanny, who believed in respecting one's daily bread. Lunch is often interrupted by spirited debates over the relative merits of Greek versus Roman history. Dinner, taken in the nursery or on rare special occasions at the family table, is a spectacle of manners, soup slurping, and the ongoing negotiation for extra dessert. Then there are the birthday parties. No simple cake and candles will suffice. Each celebration is a neighbourhood event. Fireworks, miniature orchestras, magicians from distant cities, and, on more than one memorable occasion, a tame bear wearing a party hat. The children accept these extravagances with the weary grace of minor royalty. Last year's cake had 7 tiers, one size. Perhaps this year we'll get a hot air balloon ride. The bar for parental love is set somewhere just above small travelling circus. Despite the opulence, the children are not entirely helpless. By the age of 12, each has mastered the art of the polite refusal, the strategic pout, and the gentle art of accidentally revealing secrets to visiting aunts. They can curtsy in snowshoes, recite Shakespeare upside down, and draw accurate family trees so long as someone else ties their cravat. So, are these children spoiled? Or are they being meticulously shaped into future titans of society, armoured with education, connections, and the ability to charm, or terrify, any dinner guest? Perhaps it's both. In the world of the rich, childhood is just another proving ground, albeit one with better toys, grander parties, and nannies who can quote Voltaire while wrangling a bear, because one day they'll have their own staff to command and their own velvet ropes to cross. But for now, their only duty is to be dazzling, multilingual, and, when the situation demands, utterly and delightfully impossible. Night falls. You're gently helped into a bed the size of a modern garage, wrapped in silk sheets and watched over by portraits of ancestors who look just as smug. Somewhere outside, the city hums and cannons boom in the distance. You drift off, wondering if you'll dream of diamonds or just tomorrow's breakfast menu. The nightly ritual of sleep in your household is nothing less than ceremonial. Your personal attendant arrives with slippers lined in velvet and a warm mug of spiced milk, imported cinnamon naturally. The bedroom glows with the soft light of a dozen beeswax candles, arranged to create the most flattering shadows. It is a chamber designed not just for rest, but for presentation. Brocaded curtains, a faint scent of lavender and rose, and carpet so plush you briefly consider sleeping on the floor just for the novelty. Before you climb in, there's a flurry of preparation. Your nightshirt, starched and monogrammed, is draped over a chaise lounge. Your hair is gently brushed, 100 strokes, as prescribed by the French governess who insists it prevents midnight tangles and bad dreams. A tray arrives with a delicate biscuit for sleep's journey, a glass of spring water, and, should you require it, a silver bell to summon help for any midnight inconvenience, from nightmares to the tragic absence of a second pillow. The bed itself is a marvel. 4-poster naturally, with curtains so thick they might block out cannon fire, or at least the draught from the window. The mattress is stuffed with goose down and, if family lore is to be believed, the odd tuft of cashmere from a very grateful goat. Silk sheets are pulled tight, as smooth as poured cream. You lie back and feel yourself sinking into a softness so complete it could almost erase the memory of a single stressful thought, if, of course, you had any. Above, the ever-watchful ancestors gaze down from their gilded frames. Some appear benevolent, some bored, a few possibly judging your choice of pillow arrangement. You suspect at least one ancestor was painted in this very room, possibly while wearing the same nightcap you're currently sporting. You send up a silent plea for peaceful dreams, and perhaps a little luck in tomorrow's shopping expedition. As you settle, the distant sounds of the city filter in. A carriage rattling down the cobblestone street, the faint tinkle of piano keys from a neighbouring parlour, a cannon boom far off across the river. War's reminder that not everyone sleeps quite so soundly. For a moment, you imagine the world beyond your silken cocoon, soldiers on muddy cots, night watchmen pacing under flickering lanterns, the poor huddled in draughty tenements. Guilt might stir if you weren't so incredibly comfortable. You pull the sheets higher, wrap yourself in the gentle embrace of excess, and focus on the time-honoured tradition of the wealthy insomniac. Planning tomorrow's meals, reordering the guest list in your mind, and rehearsing possible retorts for breakfast gossip. The worries of the world feel very far away, muffled by velvet drapes and familial entitlement. Should sleep prove elusive, you know the protocols. A dab of lavender oil on the temples, a soothing story read by the junior governess, her accent delightfully mysterious, or the butler's fail-safe, a second pillow fluffed to perfection, and just a dash of laudanum if you're feeling dramatic. Eventually the gentle lull of comfort overtakes the fretful flutter of consciousness, and you drift away on a cloud of silk, soothed by the muted chaos beyond your walls. In the end, you surrender to the kind of sleep only inherited wealth and absolute luxury can buy, deep, undisturbed, and blissfully unaware of the world's woes. The cannons may thunder, but here, in the cradle of privilege, night brings only the softest dreams, the safest silences, and the eternal promise of another decadent dawn. You don't just have your portrait painted, you commission it by the dozen. Each one is a carefully curated fantasy, a visual retouch before Photoshop existed. You demand the artist make you look thinner, taller, and if possible, slightly less haunted by the existential dread of a crumbling economy. If your jewellery doesn't glint in oil paint, did you even really own it? The portrait process begins weeks in advance, with the solemn selecting of outfits. You spend hours, days even, debating lace versus brocade, emeralds versus sapphires, or whether to risk wearing Aunt Agatha's infamous feathered cape, which once startled a parlour cat into early retirement. Out come the gloves, the fans, the gilded combs. Each accessory is carefully evaluated for its timelessness, and how likely it is to outshine your cousin's last portrait, still haunting the stairwell with its smug smile and suspiciously tiny waist. Then comes the setting. The grand salon is transformed into a temporary stage, all drapes drawn and extra candelabras deployed to ensure the light is both noble and merciful. You arrange yourself on the chaise lounge, gently, as if you're above both gravity and criticism, while your attendants fluff pillows, dust jewels, and occasionally whisper encouraging gossip to keep your posture regal. The artist arrives, brushes bristling and an air of humble terror in tow. This is not just a painting, it is a negotiation. You spend an hour discussing mood and composition, meaning you'd like to appear winsome but powerful, dreamy yet dangerously close to inventing indoor plumbing. You strike a pose that suggests you're both the moral centre of the family and possibly hiding a secret bank account in Switzerland. Sittings are long and, let's be honest, slightly absurd. You must remain perfectly still, chin high, shoulders back, one hand draped just so over a conveniently placed prop, perhaps a book to suggest literacy, or a lapdog to suggest benevolence. Your children are arranged at your feet, angelic for the 1 hour it takes before someone sneezes on the oil paint and has to be airbrushed out entirely. The artist dabs, squints and mutters about capturing your essence, while you practice your most flattering angle and rehearse facial expressions somewhere between approachable and mysterious benefactor. Portraits are never finished on the first try. There are always requests. Make me a touch taller. No, taller than that. Can you remove the double chin? But leave the jawline heroic. The pearls should shimmer, not just sit there. Add some sparkle, yes, like hope during rationing. If the first draft fails to reflect your actual skin tone, you simply declare yourself fashionably pale and commission a companion painting for the summer months. The unveiling is an event unto itself. Family members gather in the drawing room, sipping sherry and casting sidelong glances at the covered canvas. When the cloth drops, gasps and polite applause fill the air. Even your sharpest critics must admit the jewellery sparkles, your waist is a triumph of artistry and optimism, and your expression suggests the kind of calm normally reserved for Swiss bankers and people with reliable plumbing. Of course, one portrait is never enough. Over time, your image multiplies. A study in blue silk for the winter parlour, a sunlit garden pose for the breakfast room, a heroic bust for the front hall, just above the umbrella stand so you'll always be seen, even on rainy days. Your likeness outnumbers the actual family, gazing down from every angle, an immortal testament to the enduring power of creative interpretation and strategic accessorizing. You fall asleep each night under the watchful gaze of a dozen yous, each more flattering, more dazzling, and, just maybe, a touch less burdened by reality than the original. In the world of the rich, the art of the portrait isn't about what's true, it's about what should have been. If only you'd had a better painter, a brighter emerald, and a little more time to suck in your stomach. Every great mansion is riddled with hidden passageways, and even better gossip. Affairs aren't just expected, they're practically encouraged, provided they're whispered about in French. You orchestrate rendezvous behind velvet drapes, and try to remember which cousin you're not supposed to flirt with. The real currency here isn't money, it's secrets traded at midnight. By daylight, the mansion is a well-oiled machine of manners and marble, where each step echoes with propriety. But as night falls and the gas lamps flicker low, the house comes alive with possibility. Every flickering shadow hints at clandestine meetings. Every unlatched window becomes an invitation. In this world, love isn't just complicated, it's a full-contact sport, played with fans, false names, and the occasional cryptic note tucked into a potted fern. Hidden doors and twisting corridors aren't just for show, they're the arteries of romance. You become an expert at slipping away unnoticed, the soft click of the panel behind the library signalling your escape from the watchful eyes of aunts and rivals. Rendezvous are carefully timed. A whispered conversation during the second act of a dull opera. A lingering touch while waltzing just a shade too closely. A secret letter exchanged beneath the dessert table while everyone is distracted by the flaming pudding. Of course, discretion is a rare commodity. Servants pretend not to notice, but their silence can always be bought with a coin, a compliment, or, in one memorable case, a ticket to next week's masquerade. The butler keeps a ledger, not just of wine, but of whispers, and sometimes you wonder if the greatest power in the house is not held by the master, but by the one who knows exactly who disappeared with whom and when. Affairs follow a code as old as gossip itself, plausible deniability, artful dodges, and the careful selection of a language in which to be overheard. French is the gold standard. It adds an air of sophistication and plausible confusion for any eavesdropper. Il est très charmant, n'est-ce pas? C'est possible, mais il a des secrets. You practice your accent in the mirror, just in case you're called upon to issue a denial with a touch of continental flair. Love triangles, or more accurately, love hexagons, are almost inevitable. The guest list for any given ball can be diagrammed as a web of unresolved flirtations, ancient rivalries, and mistaken midnight strolls in the garden. You try to keep track, who last danced with whom, which sick headaches are genuine, and who keeps sending bouquets of violets to the wrong bedroom. Sometimes you suspect your own involvement, and have to consult your diary for a full reckoning. For the rich, heartbreak is both high-stakes sport and indoor entertainment. A well-timed snub at breakfast, a glance held just a moment too long, a handkerchief dropped or retrieved, At precisely the right moment, these are the moves that fuel months of drawing room speculation. The matriarchs shake their heads in mock disapproval, while privately relishing every morsel of scandal. Fathers feign outrage for the sake of decorum, though even they recall a misadventure or two from their own youth. Yet, for all the risk and drama, there is a certain charm, the thrill of a secret, the whispered promise of midnight meetings, the knowledge that behind every curtain and beneath every formal smile is a story that will one day become legend. You learn that love, like money, is a currency to be spent, gambled, and sometimes lost with spectacular flair. As dawn breaks, you slip back into the proper side of the corridor, hair slightly mussed, a borrowed brooch pinned where no one will notice. You practice your best innocent expression for the inevitable inquisition over breakfast, knowing that by tonight, someone else will be the subject of the house's whispered wonders. Because in this world, the real legacy isn't the family jewels or the velvet drapes, it's the stories, secrets, and scandals you accumulate, one moonlit rendezvous at a time. Weddings are less about love and more about tactical alliances and outspending the competition. You attend ceremonies where the cake is 6 feet tall, the bride arrives by swan boat, and the gifts are registered directly with Tiffany's. Guests discreetly compare diamond weights, while the orchestra plays the march for the 7th time. The marriage might not last, but the debt certainly will. In this world, the wedding season is both a marathon and a blood sport. Invitations arrive months in advance, each one heavier and more ornate than the last, engraved in gold tied with silk ribbon, and often accompanied by a small but meaningful bribe to ensure attendance. Your calendar fills quickly, each date an unspoken challenge. Will you outshine your cousin's celebration from last spring? Will the seating arrangement pit you against old rivals, or strategically place you next to someone who controls railroad shares? Preparations begin with the dress. The bride, flanked by a battalion of designers, selects not just one gown, but a wardrobe. One for the ceremony, another for the banquet, and perhaps a third just in case of inclement weather or sudden fashion enlightenment. Each dress is a feat of engineering, lace from Paris, pearls from the Orient, and silk so delicate that even the breeze is asked to behave. The bridesmaids' attire is similarly scrutinized, their main purpose being to look lovely, but not so lovely as to outshine the main event. The ceremony itself is staged with military precision. The venue, be it cathedral, country estate, or rose-filled garden, has been scouted for months, evaluated on everything from lighting for portraiture to carriage parking. Swans glide past on cue, flowers cascade from every ledge and column, creating an atmosphere more botanical garden than place of worship. The minister is briefed on family alliances, forbidden topics, and which ex-fiancé should never, under any circumstances, be acknowledged. Then there's the spectacle. The bride's arrival is choreographed to the minute, sometimes involving live animals, pyrotechnics, or a surprise string quartet rising from beneath the dais. Guests stand in awe, or perhaps mild terror, awaiting their cue to gasp at the right moment. Children in miniature tuxedos scatter petals. Elderly aunts sob discreetly behind lace handkerchiefs. The I-do's are pronounced, rings are exchanged, and somewhere a mother faints, partly from the emotion, partly from the sheer cost of imported lilies. The reception is where alliances are forged and rivalries renewed. The cake is more architectural feat than dessert, requiring scaffolding and its own insurance policy. Toasts are delivered, not for love, but for legacy, each speaker striving to be clever, sentimental, and just slightly more memorable than the last. The meal is an endless parade of delicacies: oysters, quail's eggs, mountains of sugared fruits, and more champagne than France can reasonably be expected to supply in a single fiscal year. No one forgets the gifts. Tables sag under the weight of silver, crystal, and monogrammed everything. The true contest is not just who brings the most valuable present, but whose will be displayed most prominently, whose card will be mentioned in the morning's papers. The couple beams, radiant in both affection and the knowledge that their thank you notes will require a dedicated secretary and several months of effort. The night ends, as it always does, with a grand send-off. Fireworks erupt overhead. The bride and groom depart, perhaps by swanboat, perhaps by gilded carriage, perhaps just by slipping quietly out the back in search of peace. As the guests trickle home, already plotting improvements for next season's nuptials, the final reckoning begins. Who came, who wore what, who danced with whom, and who managed to outspend everyone without actually appearing to try. Because in this world, marriage is not just a union of hearts, it's a declaration of social victory. The romance may fade, but the legend and the receipts live forever. When the city gets stifling and rumours get stale, you retreat to the countryside for fresh air, which mostly means more parties but with extra mosquitoes. Your plantation home hosts endless soirees featuring imported fireworks, croquet for the insomniac elite, and storytelling that suspiciously glosses over how the crops are actually grown. The real highlight, gossiping about who got too sunburned to be seen in public. Summer is, of course, never a time for relaxation, not in your circles. It's a movable feast of spectacle and spectacle-adjacent activities. The carriages roll out of the city in a grand parade, trunks stacked with linen suits, parasols, and more hats than can fit in even the most generous wardrobe. By the time you reach your summer estate, the air is thick with cicada song and the whiff of ambition masked by lemon verbena. The days fall into a decadent rhythm. Morning begins on the veranda, sipping chilled lemonade and pretending not to notice that half the guests haven't yet recovered from last night's informal ball. The staff bustle around you, arranging chaise lounges just so that your skin might be kissed by sunlight but never actually exposed to it for more than 3 minutes. You commission a sun hat with a brim so wide it nearly starts a rivalry with the nearest oak. Afternoons are devoted to rustic pursuits, by which of course no one means manual labour. Croquet is the official sport, played with a seriousness that belies its gentle pace. Matches are whispered about for days, especially after misses. Vancourt's legendary tumble into the hedge. For the less athletically inclined, there's whist on the porch or languid strolls through the rose gardens, time to avoid the hottest hours, and, whenever possible, the family's most tiresome acquaintances. The evenings are where the magic and the real mischief begin. Plantation parties are legendary, not just for their scale, but for their inventive extravagance. Each week brings a new theme: masked balls, midnight picnics beneath paper lanterns, or the highly anticipated Firefly Fete, where imported fireworks burst overhead and guests try to outshine the natural illuminations. Mosquitoes, the true uninvited guests, are battled with a combination of citronella, lace fans, and bravado. Storytelling after dark is a sacred ritual. The best tales are woven with just enough truth to sting and just enough fiction to keep the audience guessing. You take your place on the grand porch swing, the moonlight catching the gleam of your silk dressing gown, and launch into a saga about the time your cousin mistook a skunk for a lost spaniel, an error the poor dear is still living down. Laughter echoes across the lawns, punctuated by the soft thud of croquet balls and the occasional scandalised gasp. The real contest, though, is in social survival. Sunburn is the ultimate faux pas, a badge of shame for the careless or the recently arrived from up north. Each morning, faces are examined for even the faintest hint of redness. A particularly disastrous burn can result in days spent hiding in dimly lit parlours, inventing tales of rare illness or sudden academic interest. The rest of the guests quietly gloat, dabbing on rosewater and congratulating themselves on their superior shade strategies. As the night deepens, the parties wind down only in theory. In reality, there is always one more card game, one more midnight stroll, one last whispered rumour beneath the magnolias. The estate hums with energy until the first birds begin to sing and the staff begin preparing for breakfast, because the cycle, like the summer, is endless. You return to bed as the sun peeks over the fields, lulled by the knowledge that, for now, the world outside your estate can wait. Summer in the country is a chance to escape, indulge, and scheme anew, while mosquitoes and gossip alike buzz ceaselessly in the golden dusk. Because in this world, summer isn't about peace and quiet. It's about proving, once and for all, that you can throw a better party than anyone else, especially under the moonlight. Even tragedy is an opportunity for one-upmanship. When a relative dies, you commission the world's most dramatic mourning attire: jet black silk, diamond-studded handkerchiefs, and a hearse pulled by the most fashion-forward horses in town. Funerals become the season's hottest event, with rivals attending just to see who can weep the most theatrically, and who's already wearing next year's mourning trend. Death in your circle is never just about loss, it's about presentation. The moment the news breaks, a flurry of telegrams flies across town: condolences, requests for viewing times, and most importantly, questions about the dress code. The house is transformed overnight into a stage for grand melancholy. Black crepe drapes every banister, mirrors are shrouded, and even the family dog sports a velvet mourning ribbon. Embroidered, of course. The wardrobe is a work of art. Morning fashion houses go into overdrive, their seamstresses stitching swathes of black silk so lustrous it reflects the sombre faces of every visitor. The hats are nothing short of architectural, wide-brimmed masterpieces adorned with jet beads, veils so thick you could easily hide a tear, a smile, or a yawn. Every handkerchief is hand-hemmed, monogrammed, and, if you're feeling competitive, dusted with the tiniest sparkle of diamonds, just visible when pressed delicately to your cheek. The invitations are just as grand. Delivered by liveried footmen, they specify the time of the funeral and, for the truly fashionable, a short list of expected accessories. Long gloves, single-string pearls, expressions of quiet dignity preferred. You debate adding a note about appropriate levels of sobbing, but trust the guests to know their own limits, or at least to follow the lead of whichever widow sets the bar highest that week. On the day itself, the estate overflows with carriages, each blacker and glossier than the last, each drawn by horses outfitted in mourning plumes that nod with every step. The hearse arrives last, its driver so solemn you wonder if he charges extra for each additional frown. Pallbearers compete not just in strength, but in stoicism. Rumour has it the Vanderbilts once hired a professional mourner from Paris, a woman whose only job was to faint delicately at the graveside and be revived with smelling salts. As the procession winds through the town, the onlookers judge everything. Floral arrangements, orchids are in this year, the quality of the velvet lining on the coffin, even the choreography of tearful embraces at the church doors. The choir's harmonies are exquisite, echoing through the aisles as guests dab their eyes and exchange knowing glances about who performed best at last month's funeral. The sermon is full of glowing praise, some deserved, some ambitious, all of it noted for future retelling at dinner parties. The reception is no mere wake, it's a full-scale social event. Black-iced petit fours, melancholy punch, and canapés served by staff in black armbands. The best tables are claimed early, close to the most photogenic bouquets. Guests float between rooms, sharing memories and discreetly comparing mourning jewellery. Brooches with miniature portraits, lockets of hair, and, if you're truly daring, a ring set with a single jet teardrop. Even grief has its trends. Mourning periods are extended or curtailed as fashion demands. The truly ambitious plan to unveil their next look at just the right interval. A transition from black to purple to dove grey, each colour signalling a new stage of sorrow, and crucially a new wardrobe. For months afterward, acquaintances will comment on your composure, your choice of veil, your ability to suffer beautifully. Because here, even loss is an occasion to rise above, to turn tears into jewels, heartbreak into haute couture, and funerals into the hottest ticket in town. In the end, you weep for your loved one, but also for the inevitable day when someone else will outdo your display of grief with an even taller hat, a glossier hearse, or, heaven help us, a mourning dove release timed to the final organ note. Because in the world of the wealthy, mourning is just another way to make a lasting impression. Let's bring this golden fever dream in for a landing. Tonight, you've drifted through velvet-draped halls, nibbled on endangered birds, and tried, just for a moment, to imagine the weight of a diamond tiara before breakfast. You've watched fortunes burn brighter than cannon fire, all while the world outside trembled with war and uncertainty. The rich of Civil War America survived by building fortresses of luxury against chaos, proof that when life gets tough, some people reach for the nearest gold-plated umbrella. But as you tuck yourself into your very own bed, maybe not quite silk, but blissfully free of peacock feathers, spare a little gratitude for the simpler comforts. Indoor plumbing, quiet nights, the freedom to sleep without worrying whether your chamber pot matches your candelabra. In the end, no matter how extravagant the banquet or how ridiculous the fashion, everyone still faces the same dark, quiet night and the hope of a peaceful morning. So here's to the resilience of those absurdly wealthy survivors, and to you, survivor of your own daily battles lying here now. May you find rest that's softer than a velvet fainting couch, dreams gentler than any orchestra's lullaby, and gratitude for all the small luxuries of the present. History proves that people are stubborn, inventive, and let's face it, kind of ridiculous. And maybe, just maybe, that's the real inheritance passed down through the ages. A wild, stubborn hope and the ability to laugh at life's extravagance. Sleep well and remember, you don't need a mansion to feel rich tonight. Good night.